Welcome to Life Design Diaries, the show that gives you permission to live your best life. We're Ross and Lucy Menghini. We're 28, married, entrepreneurs, and traveling the world all at the same time. This episode is our first guest conversation. I have joining me none other than podcast royalty, David Ralph. David is the host of Entrepreneur Success Stories by the Join Up Dots podcast, where he interviews many successful entrepreneurs in his unique and fun way, inspired by Steve Jobs. David is listed as the #1 podcaster for motivation on iTunes. He has created for himself the full-time lifestyle through podcasting and is one of the most successful single-produced podcasts in the world. He has now completed nearly 1,000 episodes, earning him a lot of money in the process. This is a remote interview. I'm in Vietnam and David is in his home in England. We dig into many subjects, including how David started on his path to podcasting, building multiple income streams, losing your ego, when to say yes, and advice to David's younger self. We even cross into a bit of a hybrid episode when David brings his Sermon on the Mic section from his podcast. This was really interesting episode with loads to learn from. So please enjoy my conversation with David Ralph. David, thank you for coming to our show.
Oh, it's an absolute delight, Ross. And I tell you what, we've been doing this for about an hour already, haven't we? We should
we have.
We should have been recording that stuff straight from the back because we have got a connection. You and me have got a connection, and I think it will come across on this episode that we've got a story to tell. It's similar stories, and it's going to make a difference to somebody out there listening today.
Absolutely. Well, that's the hope. So should we start by going through your story then? Do you want to just give us an overview of what your story is?
I'll start from where I am at the moment. For people that don't know who I am, my name's David Ralph and I'm the host of Join Up Dots, which at the moment I'm proud to say is the #1 motivational podcast on earth. Basically, if you go to iTunes, type in motivational, bang, we're there. And it's been a bit of a roller coaster from where I am now to where I started. But I think I had the classic story of I'd been in a job that I didn't want to be in for too long and got bored with it. And I was going through the motions. I used to be a financial trainer in the City of London. I used to stand up doing public speaking and presentations and training courses. And I used to love it. I used to stand up there loving that. But away from the performance, it was all a bit flat. I'd seen it all before. I'd gone round the cycle. And I got into the Tim Ferriss 4-Hour Work Week. And I was a poster boy for that. And I read it 4 times back to back. And I started to think, I could change my life this way. I could do work remotely. Yeah, Ross, say.
I was just going to say, it's amazing how many times that book comes up in conversation when we talk about, where we've come from and how we've got to this point. And how old were you at this point?
I was 44 years old. Well, about 43 years old. And I'd been dabbling with online work beforehand, making a bit of AdSense and different websites and stuff. So it wasn't a stretch for me to read that book and think to myself, blimey, this is it. And I always remember bottom paragraph of page 44, I read it and the strength went out of me because I realised it was the end of my working life. So subsequently, I had the 4-Hour Work Week. I built it into my life. The manager loved it. I was doing more work, not being there, having a lovely life, floating around. Brilliant. And then a new manager came in and she was like the 4-minute work week. You had to be there every second of every day. And she was on the top of you. So if I stepped away for the toilet, she wanted to know where I was. And I just thought, I've had enough of this. I just can't do it. So I quit to become a web designer just because I could kind of do that. And after 3 days, I thought, I hate this. This is terrible. I quite liked doing it when it was a hobby. But now trying to find customers and building into it, I just can't do it. So I thought to myself, I'm just going to listen to some podcasts. And I listened to 3 back to back. And I thought to myself, I think I could do this. this sounds like my kind of thing. And so I went for it, and we launched, and I did 365 episodes in the first year, and we're now coming up to our 1,000th episode, and I'm about, I think, an independent podcaster, as I say that, person who hasn't got a team, hasn't got a organisation behind them. I'm pretty much the number one UK podcaster because I earn all my living through podcasting, and most people do it as a bit of a side hustle.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly sort of podcast royalty. I mean, God, I've done 7 podcasts so far, so I understand kind of the complexities that goes into it. So to do 1,000, wow, that's
it gets easier though, Ross. It does. It's like everything, you know. When you make love for the first time, you're all over the shop, and after you've done it 1,000 times, you're getting good at it.
Yeah. And well, when you what you just said there, though, I always find it interesting when people talk on reflection, and I know that's kind of one of the themes of your podcast of joining up the dots, and I'll let you kind of explain that in a bit later. But you just looked back then and said, so I felt pretty unhappy, and so I quit. Now, in reality, I know that decision is so much more challenging than just the words, and so I quit. So do you want to just tell us about, you know, how you felt at that time, and what was it? You know, how did this new manager that come into your life, why was that the trigger? And do you think there always needs to be a trigger to actually make that decision?
I think she was a catalyst, and at the time I was saying to people, what a cow, I can't put up with this, and I focused everything in on this lady. Now I look back on it, and I would actually, you know, send her a bottle of champagne. Unfortunately, she's passed away now, but at the time she was my whole catalyst for my distress. What it was, Ross, really, I realised I was a fraud and a charlatan, basically. I was the classic motivational person that would stand up in a room, talk to people and say to them, you can do better than this, you could go out and get any job you want, you could do this, you could do that, why don't you do this, you know, brilliant. And I was talking to a guy one morning, and when I finished talking to him and I walked to my desk, it was about 3 steps, I thought to myself, that's the last time I can say that to somebody and not do anything myself. And I think that was it. It wasn't her. It was just that I was absolutely on to changing the world, changing people's lives, but I wasn't doing it myself. I was the speaker, but I wasn't the action taker. So I think when I quit, I did quit. I just went, that's it, boom, I've got to do this, because it was all those conversations that I'd had. I have a thing that I call my motivation rocket, and when I get onto full flow and blast it at people, they can't. I see them grow in front of me. I see them with getting excited and the possibilities. And I was a fraud, really. I was firing at everyone, but not actually doing anything about it myself. And now I use that same super talent, I think, on my show. It works really well, but I can back it up with saying I've done it myself. I'm not just saying these words, I've actually done it. So I was unhappy, but I was just talking the talk, not walking the walk.
Yeah. And I found that making a decision, so that sounds like when you actually made that decision, you know, it was a second. And I've spoke previously on the podcast about the actual decision is quite a quick process. It's the build up to actually getting that certain mindset of what you want to do next, isn't it? That is all the struggle and takes the time. Yeah,
there's a 2-stage thing on that. Number one, it's to find the thing you love, as they say. And I always play a Jim Carrey speech on my show where he says, you know, you might as well go, you can fail at what you don't like, so you might as well go for the thing you love. Now, I think love is too big. I think love is too sexy. You know, love happens every now and again. Otherwise, we'd be falling in love with every single person that we met. We like most people that we meet, and I think what people should do, first of all, is find something that they like doing, but then become obsessed by it. Get better and better and better and build into the love. But then the second stage is, how do you transition that love to get paid for it? And that's the hard bit. It's quite easy to do these bold statements of punch your boss in the face and go for the dream and you'll never work again. But of course we have to work to pay for the bills. And I know with Join Up Dots, my show, fortunately it's rocking and rolling now. It's going really well. But I'm coming up to the 4th year in 2 days' time as we're recording this, the 4th year. First year, I didn't earn anything at all. Money was just going out. Second year, I sort of bounced along, getting a little bit in, nothing major. Third year was when it started to come in big time. And so I had to do certain things behind the scenes to give me a long enough runway to be able to get to the love. And what I did, I built a holiday site, which is total passive income. I bought into a business. I did a load of other stuff not connected with what I'm doing now, just so that I could grow into. And now, effectively, the other things are sort of side hustles, and this is my big thing. But that's the 2-stage. Finding the thing that you like, building it into love, and then trying to get paid for it. And it's hard. It is hard.
Yeah, and I always think to make that change and actually go for it. If you feel like any of the listeners are stuck now and they want to make a change, I always feel like you need to there has to be some kind of trigger or some kind of emotion whereby you want the next thing more than the risk of losing what you've got now.
Yes.
And interestingly for me in my journey, it's we're going traveling, and I look back and I think if we didn't have the travel idea that kind of sprung to mind, would that? I question myself. I wonder whether we would be doing this or not, because I do believe you need that catalyst. And just how you said that you set yourself up with other revenue streams, I followed exactly the same thing, and mine was mainly property, to provide some income there. So I kind of feel like it's basically by setting those things up, you are lessening the hurdle that you need to jump, or the perceived hurdle. It becomes a much smaller step that you can see that transition in front of you.
Yeah, and you got to lose your ego. You've got to become really humble. I was earning really good money being a trainer, standing in front of people, having presentations. There was a lot of kudos to it. And when I quit, I went from that to that stage when people were saying, what the hell are you doing? And for the first sort of 35 episodes before I launched, I didn't tell anyone I was doing it. I spent a lot of money. I built a proper recording studio, brick built, back of my garden. I really set the infrastructure up because I thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. But I couldn't tell anyone because I felt a bit stupid, and I felt a bit, who's he to be doing this? Who's going to talk to him? What knowledge has he got in this subject? And it was all sort of imposter syndrome. And so I subtly went into it. But I also did things like I was delivering curry takeaway in the evening, or takeout as they say in America, and I was doing things that people could have seen me and went, oh, he's had a breakdown. He was doing that and now he's doing this. But I didn't care. Inside I kind of cared, and inside there was still an ego thinking, oh my God, have I done the right thing here, but it gave me a cushion. And I would say to everybody out there's a lot of cushions around. You don't actually have to go from A to B and replace your income. All you've got to do is, can I replace my electricity each month? Yes, I need £100, whatever. How do I create £100? Can I replace my mobile phone? And break down all your expenditure by doing other stuff. It might be selling stuff on eBay. It might be mowing somebody's lawn. It might be, there's always ways to build cushions to allow for that longer runway so that you can get what you want. But you've got to throw the ego off. And I think I struggled with that at the beginning. But now I look back on it, I reflect, I join up my dots and I go, thank God I was willing to swallow that down and go for it, because it make it easier.
Yeah, but as well as ego, I think it's just a complete mindset change, isn't it? Because the mindset from having one income stream whereby that is your salary, and that's most people, isn't it? Most people have a salaried job and that's the income that they rely on. But to kind of think about structuring it differently, whereby you may have more income streams and even just multiple income streams. You mentioned there selling something on eBay. In a previous podcast, I talked about just that, about just selling an item and what you learn from that. The kind of process in sourcing something and then selling it teaches you so much. But actually, I know from my experience that when I looked at that, when I was struggling, when I really knew that something was missing and I wanted to start my own business and do something for myself, I viewed selling something online as not it. And you talk about...
Why, Ross? I'm going to turn the tables on you here. Why?
Well, you said then about find the thing you love, and I was going to dig into that a little bit more, because some people may not know what it exactly is they love. And it's all right to downgrade that to say, okay, what is the thing you like? But I just find if you're really struggling with that, And that's kind of what's being told to you is what's the thing you love. For example, I didn't love property, or I didn't love. Did you love delivering curries?
In a funny way, I did, because secretly it was cash in hand. It wasn't a tax man thing. And you could keep all the tips. And I liked the little challenge of pulling up at the doorstep and only having £15 when I knew it was going to be £12, so that I could get an extra £2 tip, and little things like that. And there was there was a kind of little challenge that I built into every delivery. And there was also a real miserable delivery guy. Oh, he was a right old what's it he was. And I used to try to get round and get back as quickly as possible to get the next one, so that when he came back moaning and groaning, he had to wait longer for his next delivery. So there was little sort of challenges in there. So I kind of liked it on that, and I do like it because now I'm in this podcasting lark. There's a lot you got to think about. You got to think about marketing, you got to think about sales strategies, you got to think about sales funnels, you got to think about a lot of things where there's upskilling, and delivering those takeaways. It was sort of mindless. I didn't have to think. I just did what I was told. And I think there's a lot to be said about that. Just doing jobs where your brain is resting instead of constantly thinking all the time. Because I think it's the mental aspect that wears you down. Certainly in the entrepreneurial world at the beginning, more than the actual physical. You can work for hours and then hours and hours, but your brain just gets tired and then you're not functioning full on. So I did kind of like it.
Yeah, I think the other message here is just how much patience you need to have as an entrepreneur. Because you said it took 3 years. And again, you say that 3 years is easy to say, but if you actually imagine what 3 years looks like day by day, that's quite a grind. And even though you're doing now what you want to do, there's a lot of ups and downs within that, whereby I'm sure you've questioned yourself that you're not seeing any, revenue anywhere near what you left behind in your kind of corporate role. And so you just have to be patient, don't you, to know that what you're doing is on the correct path and that you will figure it out eventually.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about that. I actually went through a couple of really... I kept on hearing this word burnout. People would talk about burnout. Oh, I've suffered with burnout. I never really understood what burnout was. I remember being really tired in corporate land. I remember lots of different things, but I never had burnout. And then through Join Up Dots, there was a point where the show was on a plateau. Now I look back on it, I think that is how it's supposed to be. That's when the roots are growing. But you start off something, especially in podcasting, you start off and you go from nothing. So you see instant results. They may not be huge results, but it's quite exciting that people are coming to you and listening to you. And then you get to a point where it's not really going up. And what I thought I could do, I could outwork anyone. If I outworked this, I would get there. And everything I do, I really put energy in and enthusiasm and passion. And I got to a point where people were saying to me, David, you look terrible. What are you doing? I was saying, oh, yeah, I've just had a rough few weeks and stuff. And then my cholesterol went through the roof. And I went to the doctor and he said, you've got to do something. You're going to either be 6 months from a stroke or 6 months from a heart attack. And to be honest, I didn't fancy either of those. But I just thought, right, okay, what I'll do, and this is stupid, Ross, looking back on it, I thought what I'll do, I'll outwork it again, because then I will get to a point where it's easy life, and I've solved all my issues. So I doubled up. And then my hair started dropping out. And I was always renowned for like luxurious big hair. And it just started falling out in clumps, and I thought, oh my God, I've got an issue here. And I had to close down everything other than what I needed to do to get myself back on track and to reduce the stress and workload. And it was brilliant. Looking back on it, it was brilliant because I found the sweet spot in everything. I looked at everything in my business and thought, what is the 80-20? What is bringing me the greatest results so that I don't have to do that work but get the greatest results? And through that, I now train people across the world on how to create a podcast that grows every month without doing Facebook and Twitter and all the promotional material. I found it through the hard times. And my show, Join Up Dots, is very much about looking back at the black dots in your life and realizing that actually when you get far enough away from them, they were your white dots. because that was the learning. That was the bit that really put you on the path. And so, yeah, I was stupid in so many ways, but you get there. You get there. And if you're willing to do it because you like or love the thing you do, I think you're willing to put up with it because it becomes more of a hobby and a fascination and not just a grind, as you say.
Yeah. And going through all of that, trying to double up and work even harder, do you feel that was a necessary process on reflection now when you look back to join up your dots?
I think it was stupid. I really, I look back on it and I just don't understand why I was doing it.
But do you think you would have learned the lesson, that exact lesson, without doing that?
I don't think I would have found the sweet spot in everything. As I was saying to you beforehand, my recording is seamless. I have a top show and I only do it 3 days a month. It gave me the ability to go, oh my God, what needs to be done, not what has to be done. And I had like a Facebook community group, a coaching group, and I basically went on there and said, guys, play amongst yourselves, I'm leaving. Now, beforehand, I would have felt like I had to be there all the time, nurturing and supporting and stuff. But now I realise I do 1 video a day in there, and most of it's scheduled, and that's enough for them. And what you realise, and it was a real eye-opener, when you're starting on the entrepreneurial journey, you realise that, or you think you realise, that you've got to over-deliver everything. Everything's got to be... If somebody's paying you, $100, you've got to give them $600 of stuff. But actually, your customer isn't asking for that much. They're asking for a transformation. They're asking for a quick route from A to B, but they're not asking for you to kill yourself. And that took me a long time to realise on that the majority of stuff that you're doing, Ross, and I was doing, and I'm sure I will be doing in the future, is not required. No one's asking for it other than we think that we should be delivering it to get ahead of the game.
Yeah, and we've talked in a previous episode of this podcast about how me and Lucy have given our version on how we stay balanced in this world of hyper productivity, whereby we've constantly got this picture of the perfect person and everyone's trying to stay ahead and social media is just piling on that pressure. It sounds like then you've managed to find quite a nice balance there. Yeah,
one of the things I don't go on social media. I don't go on Twitter. I don't...
Well, no social media at all?
No, not really. No. I've just found this way of growing my show just by launching the show and doing the show. So I don't go on Facebook. Other than Facebook Messenger, I find that really, really useful, and I will connect with people. So if you go over to my my Facebook page, my personal one, you'll see that my posts probably stopped, I don't know, June last year or something, where I just decided, what am I actually on personal Facebook for? I don't really care what people are having for their dinner or their cats or their kids, so I stopped that. Instagram, I was on there. I stopped doing that. Pinterest, stopped doing that. LinkedIn, stopped doing that. I stopped everything. But what I did do really well was when I was delivering for somebody, I deliver. If somebody is on one of my podcast training sessions, I will deliver. And I try to make sure that all my clients come out the end feeling like they're my friends. And that's what I try to do. And so I'm always connecting with them saying, are you okay on this? Do you need any more help on that? And it doesn't take a lot of time. All it is getting on there in the morning, looking at my list of people, sending a quick message to them, using voicemail, all the kind of things to make it seem as personable as possible. And delivering.
Because it is so overlooked, isn't it? Your existing network, your existing clients, and how much opportunity there is within that. It's so easy to start thinking, if you're coming to a plateau or stagnating, to think, I need more clients. That's how we grow our business.
Yeah, well, without getting cocky, I've had a couple of months where I've made 6 figures for a month. Now, 6 figures for a month blows my mind. Because when I was in the corporate land before, I was earning about 65 grand a year, okay, which was great money. That was really good money, especially for standing up in front of talking to people. I went from that to nothing, really, for a period of time. And now, within my own control, I can do that in a month. But all I need to do, most of my products are worth $2,000. Some of them are worth $4,000. So I only need 50 members to connect with me, and I've got it all scalable, and I've made $100,000. Now, that doesn't happen all the time because the marketing is a bit difficult, and you've still got to get your marketing congruent to your message and your copy and all that kind of stuff. That takes time. But what I found was, once again, game changer, I stopped looking at what other podcasters were doing. I don't look at them. I don't go onto Facebook and look at the news feed. I've got this little Chrome app that means that Facebook is totally blank to me except for stuff about me. It's very ego-based. You know, I go on there and the only messages I've got my name on it. I was tagged, it's about me. So I whiz through it, spend about 10 minutes. I answer all those. But I can't see anything else. So there's no comparisons. There's no looking at that person and they're doing this and looking at that person. And of course, in social media, no one says, oh, you know, I've felt terrible today. I've had diarrhea for 4 days. You know, they never tell you the horrible stuff, the real stuff. They just tell you, oh, here I am with Bruce Springsteen and here I am doing this presentation. So you get a false sense of it. And so I don't look at any of that. I just do what's right for me, my family and my clients. And I suppose the last thing, while I'm a bit on the rant here, Ross, I don't allow anyone other than when I want to dictate my time. So with you said, you know, would you do this interview? I said, yes. When do you want to do it? We chose a time. And because it was mutually convenient to me, I went, yeah, no problem at all. But at the beginning, I would have been pulled from pillar to post. I would have allowed myself all over the shop, 12 o'clock on a Tuesday night, on 1 o'clock. And I don't. I only record on a Thursday, and if somebody says to me, will you do another episode? I say, no, you've just got to book in on there. It's abundance. And if that customer or that client or that interview doesn't occur, there's another one coming along. You don't need to be chasing the bad money because the good money's out there. You've just got to find them. And in my product, my coaching, I've had people that have paid me $4,000, $2,000 and haven't done anything. They just haven't. It's just like they've given me money. And I connect with them and they go, oh, no, I'm okay at the moment. Yeah, fine, thank you. And I think I'm not really sure what I'm delivering here, but they seem to be happy. And so I just go with it.
Fascinating that someone would do that.
Well, we've all bought those products, haven't we? Where we buy it and then absolutely. We don't use it. But once you get into sort of the higher ticket ones,
bought a book, especially. I mean, I can't count how many books I've literally read a few words of, paid for, and then I haven't finished reading it at all. Yeah. One thing that I think is a good point to say on that is that we talked earlier about having multiple streams of income and kind of changing the mindset to have different things available. That's all a version of creating something yourself, and that's kind of what taking that step into entrepreneurship would be, isn't it? Is creating something yourself. And I guess you would never get those kind of wins or, you know, interesting scenarios when someone pays you and doesn't use their product. You'd never ever experience that if you didn't actually have put yourself or a product out there in the first place. You know, because you would just be tied to kind of what you're used to at the moment. So I think there's just so much value in almost the unknown at the start of just putting something out there and creating something, and you don't know where that would lead to.
Yeah, I'm very big in creating free products, and I used to do them by sort of email dropout. But now, and you can have a look at this, you could go over to www.podcastersmasterystarters.com, and it's a 15-part website. So you get access to the website, all the videos are hosted, all on there. I'm very big on creating free products for people because I know that ultimately it helps me upskill to build the valuable ones, but it also gives me the ability to find out what people don't like about it. And through that is the knowledge that you need. It's all very easy to sit there and say, I'm going to create this. I'm going to create a product that teaches poodles to surf. And I actually say that because I know there's a lady who's got a business, and it blows my mind. I won't names drop, but he was a very famous person I was interviewing, and he said to me that his favourite business on earth, and it's now mine, is a lady who was down on the beach and she was surfing, and somebody went, oh, I'd love to surf, but I can't. my dog's here, I can't leave my dog here. And she said, well, why don't you take your dog out with you? And so she trained the dog to go on the surfboard with him. And other people were saying, I'd like to do that. And now she's got this surfing dog business, whatever it's called, because she allowed somebody to tell them what was wrong with what they were doing or their situation. So I do a lot of that kind of free product business so that people can come back and go, yeah, David, that was great, but I kind of need this. And then I think, okay, that's interesting. Jot that down. Hadn't thought about that. And it builds up valuable products, which you can then test in the market.
So when you say you launched 3, is always 3 at the same time when you're going into a new venture? How do you get to 3 and not do quite a classic thing and have loads of ideas and end up bringing out 10 different things?
Oh no, when I say free, I mean cheap. No payment.
Oh, free. Sorry. Yeah. Right. Okay. So free to test the market.
Yes. Yeah. So I sort of over-deliver in that. And I used to do the classic, maybe 1 or 2 email opt-ins and, that kind of stuff. Now I'm building in, I call it welcome mat marketing, Ross. I call it when somebody comes across, they listen to you on the podcast, they come across, I've got a whole new website being built, I've got everything to the level that hopefully when somebody comes along, they go, blimey, if this is free, what's the paid stuff like? That kind of logic?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I've been training all my people to really look at what other people are doing and think, how can I times this by 10? Welcome mat marketing, I call it.
Yeah. Okay. So do you want to tell us a bit more about your podcast then? Join Up the Dots. And, we haven't got the benefit at the moment of the Steve Jobs audio clip, which I know you play a lot on there, but give us an overview of where that concept came from.
Yeah, well, I have actually got the clip lined up and...
oh, okay.
yeah, and so we can actually play that. So, basically, when I was back in corporate land, I was getting a bit disillusioned and a podcast wasn't on the radar at all. And a guy went off to the dentist. And when you're sitting in the dentist, it's the only place you pick up like ladies' magazines and you kind of flick through it to kill a bit of time. And he read this amazing speech that Steve Jobs did. And basically what it was that he stands up and he does this speech that I'm going to play now.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart even when it leads you off the well-worn path, and that will make all the difference.
Well, that spoke to me. When I heard that originally, it spoke to me, and it spoke to me in a way that went deep into my subconscious. So when I started creating the show, I come from a training background, and I always knew there was 3 things that a podcast gains and 3 things that a podcast lacks. You've got to have a big beginning. You've got to have something that hooks somebody. And a lot of podcasts just kind of drift into this 5 or 10 minutes you've got to get through. So you've got to hook them at the beginning. You've got to hook them at the end with something. And in the middle, you've got to have certain signposts to keep them interested and make the content seem relevant. And I remember sitting in a pub with my mate and I said to him, look, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a podcast. And he said, what's a podcast? And I said, well, it's like a kind of radio thing. And he said, well, why are you doing that then? What's it going to be called? And I said, Join Up Dots. And he said, what does that mean? And I said to him, well, it means, you don't know how you get somewhere. And as I explained it to him, I could see that he went, I understand that totally. So when I launched the show, it blew me away how many people said, I only listened to that today, or I've listened to that 5 times this week, or I was only talking about that. And bear in mind that speech is 12 years old now, 13 years old almost. It has a deep resonance on 2 levels. Number 1, people like it because it's Steve. Well, 3 things actually. Number 1, people like it because it's Steve Jobs, because he has got a legacy out there. Number 2, people like that, but they hate Steve Jobs, but they like those words. And the third thing is, I think everybody likes to think that the path is waiting for them. You know, everybody likes to think that they're not on their own, that there's some kind of faith out there. And as he said, you can call it trust, you can call it God, you could call it karma. And one of the interesting things is, I saw on a TV program the other day, that even if people aren't religious in any shape or form, if they think they're going to die, they start praying. And it's interesting that in our essence, in our spirit, deep down us, we've got something that says there must be more than what I'm seeing, which is what I think ties into the show, and it ties into your show, and it ties into all those moments when somebody is sitting at their chair, looking at a spreadsheet at work, thinking, was this what I was planning for my life? Looking at this and moving this formula to that formula, there's got to be more to life. Then they start looking around and they land on Ross's website and they see what Ross and Lucy are doing and they think, that looks fun. What they're doing it, why, you know? And so I was always really aware that I had to take my listeners on a journey with them. I had to make them realise from the very first episode that I was new. I was building it. I was developing in front of them, because I hate those ones where everything seems polished and finished, but it's not. So when I had my burnout, I recorded an episode detailing all that. When I remember I launched a product and nobody bought it, I sent a podcast out saying, guys, look, I might sound competent, I might sound great, but I'm a complete failure here. I've done this, I've done that. And my audience has grown, I think, because of the reality and the fact that you have faith, but you've got to also have realism as well. And the realism is, it's not going to happen overnight. And if anybody says, buy this product and click these 3 things and you'll be making £1 million by the end of the month, you might do for the first month, but that £1 million will go the opposite way on the second month, and then you'll be back to square one or worse. Yeah, and I think that is the whole logic of it.
Yeah, it's a process. And out of interest, when you launched your podcast, how many times did it slightly change from that original concept, or was that the original concept which it is today?
It's not a million miles away. I think it was quite strong. One of the things I started doing that I realised that the interview format, which was the bulk of it, was suppressing me. I needed to get more of myself out. And so I do solo shows, and the solo shows are as much me as possible, because I like to be stupid. I like to do silly accents and sing, and I do this thing called the gargle game, where I gargle some water, and if the listeners can guess what the tune is, then they can win a prize. And so I kind of throw caution to the wind on that, and that kind of has built my branding, which is business made fun. You can really enjoy yourself and have fun while creating a business. It doesn't have to be something boring. So I think it slightly pivoted. It certainly slightly pivoted in 2 elements. Number one, I always wanted it to be kind of 30% entertainment, 30% inspiration, and 30% educational. I wanted the 3 things. So people won't like all episodes, but at least they will come out and go, either that was fun, I enjoyed it, or that taught me something, or wow, I'm getting going. And the fun bit is getting easier and easier and easier now, because people have heard how I do it. So I can get more and more stupid, and I like to be stupid. I like the classic David Letterman and the classic Jonathan Ross, and where it's kind of as much funny as interesting. I like those kind of sort of radio formats, and it was very hard at the beginning because the guests weren't used to that. They were just thought they were going to come on and do the same old thing that they've always done, but now they're more willing to go with me in that regard. So it has become a better show because of it.
Yeah. And when I hear that Steve Jobs quote, and obviously the immediate thing you do is you kind of look back on your past life and look at the dots and how you've got to where you are today and what decisions were key within that. The question I ask myself, though, I'm interested to see if you've got an answer for, is how do you use that going forward? Because we can't really do much about the past, and we can see that, we are here because of what we've done previously. But how do you then use that to get to where you want to get?
It's an interesting statement, that, because the whole show, the whole format of what he's talking about is being reflective. But what I think it is you get to a point where you realise by looking back, hey, it works. Things do join up. I can just relax. And I think that is how you project to the forward. And I think that then makes your work better, because we all know we work better when we're relaxed. We all know we work better when we're not stressed. And I think there's a time when we don't understand that. And I think that comes through the education system, that you've got to be tested. You've got to learn. You've got to, and it's always, there's some kind of tick box culture that you've got to do. But once you realise that, hey, actually, I can just be myself, deliver what I want. Hopefully it's what the listeners want, what the customers want, but it's going to work out. I think that is how you take the dots going backwards into stepping stones going forward. And certainly my whole branding, everything that I'm building now into the last 4 years, my website got hacked terribly back in June last year. And for a year now, I've got this new website being developed. And I've been really fussy with it, because I know where the level is that I'm aiming going forward because of that confidence and that trust. And I've had 2 or 3 website developers where they keep on trying to give me what I've seen other people are doing, and I'm going, no, it's got to be different, it's got to be this, it's got to be that. So I think that is the answer, Ross. I think every single person out there listening, once you start and you learn and you upskill, you then get a history where you look back and go, yeah, well, I didn't really know what I was doing, but hey, we got here somehow. It worked out.
And one of the things I take from it as well, though, you just said then, once you start, and being in that place where if you took yourself right back to when you wanted to make that change, you were unhappy within your current role. So for anyone listening now that's in that place, the main aspect for me is once you start. And for me personally, it was then, what do I start with is kind of the question straight away. And I actually took the Steve Jobs quote a little bit differently. I definitely, as you said, had more trust within the process. But the other question it kind of brought up in my head is, if I retrospectively join up the dots based on my own experiences, how do I get to where I want to quicker? How do I actually have more experiences within a short period of time?
Yeah, but why do you have to
join up more dots?
Well, why does it have to be quicker?
If you're right back in that place where there's somewhere you want to be and you're unfulfilled at that point in time and you feel a bit stuck. So I'm going right back to that place when, as you said, you were standing on stage feeling unfulfilled. So for me, it was, I can join up the dots of looking backwards and understand why I'm here. And there's a lot of learnings on the way. And you realize when you look backwards that you learn from every single scenario, good or bad. And that's why I said, when you double down and work twice as hard, you learn from that. And that was a life lesson, whether it was stupid or not. But it's then, for me, the way I took it when I first heard it, which is probably around 2 years ago, is how can I try more things, essentially. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying that's putting extra pressure on myself. It may have been. But it was actually, how can I try a few more things which would lead to different, just new experiences that you haven't got in your life at the moment. And again, you don't know where that will then lead you to.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I agree that the experiences are key. And even throughout my life, I look back on things, I think, well, that was an environment I didn't want to be in. But hey, at least I came out with something. But I don't think quicker is the solution. I really don't. It's like me coming across and saying, Ross, let's go on a road trip. We're going to do Route 66. Fancy that? And you go, yeah. And in your head, you're thinking, that's great. We can stop at Flagstaff. We can stop at Arizona. And when you get in the car with me, all I do is do 200 miles an hour for about 3 days. And we don't stop and we don't, you might do your journey, but how fun is that? You're not stopping, you're not seeing, you're having no experiences, you're just getting from A to B. And once you get to B at the other end, you may not even like it, So I think I think slow is the key. And as long as you're doing something every single day, it only has to be a couple of things, doesn't have to be big. You've done 700 things in a year, basically, and you can do that in your own time. I built whole websites and businesses in my lunch break. When I was at work, I used to just get into a corner, turn my laptop on and beaver away. And by the time I'd left, I'd started getting some quite decent income coming in due to that fact of just doing a couple of things each day. So I think experiences are key, doing a load of things, saying yes. If you haven't seen Jim Carrey's The Yes Man, watch that, because that is a brilliant way of looking at life and going, yeah, how many times do we say no, or it's not convenient, or I can't do it today, or can we schedule it in, can I take a rain check? By saying yes to almost everything, you find out if you don't like it or you like it, and some of the things are life-changing.
Yeah, I totally agree. The more things you do, and maybe I illustrated it wrong by saying it's speed. For me, it's exactly what you just said. It's experience, and the more things you do, the more you learn from, the more you get out of life, really. And so I just think saying yes to pretty much every opportunity, and just trying new things.
Yeah, there's some opportunities that you've got to say no to. If it's an opportunity that fundamentally goes against your morals, fundamentally it takes you away from what you're aiming for. I found that quite a problem when I started off Join Up Darts. To begin with, I didn't get anything, and then I got a ton of opportunities, and it was quite difficult to see the wood for the trees. Just before I started recording this, I'm editing a book that I've got coming out, where a publishing company came up to me and said, we'd like you to do a book about podcasting and stuff. And I thought, yeah, that's actually a good opportunity. I will spend time on that. But at the beginning, I think I said yes to a lot of things because I was frightened to say no. But now, if you say no, you can lead to big yeses. You give yourself the free time. So although I say watch Jim Carrey and the Yes Man, it's brilliant in concept, but I do think you've got to be aware of where you're heading and be aware if that's going to take you massively away, even though it's a fun experience, or if it's going to give an experience which you can use moving forward.
Yeah. No, I do agree. Have you seen the Derek Sivers talks quite a lot about that? The hell yes or no approach to life, which is quite good.
I haven't, and it's funny, he's just been requested to come on my show, and I'd never heard of him. I'd never heard of him at all, and so now I've heard his name twice in about 45 minutes, so I should say yes, shouldn't I?
Oh, he's fascinating. Yeah, definitely say yes to that. He talks, well, I'll talk about it on your show, but it's around his approach of saying, rather than saying yes or no to things, because that leads, as you say, to often sometimes saying yes too many times. His approach to life is either no or hell yeah. So if there's something which really gets you going that absolutely you go for, you say hell yeah. Everything else is a no. And so that leaves space and time that when you want to do something, you can really go at it rather than kind of being stretched too thin.
When was the last time, Ross, you had a hell yeah?
I'd probably say this trip. So the story of Lucy and I, of when we actually decided to do this. We were actually on our honeymoon, so it was June last year, June 2017, and Lucy turned to me, and we were in Singapore at the time. It was the first time we've actually come this far east, and she said she just threw it out there. She said we could actually live here. And that was the time, that's kind of seed, if I look back and join the dots up now, that was one of them, whereby I just looked at it and said, yeah, hell yeah, why not? And it kind of leads you to this whole path of what we're on now. And, I'm here talking to you on this podcast, and I would have never done that if I never took that initial step. So
what she was saying to you is, do you fancy sweating for 6 months? Because Singapore, I dripped when I was there.
Singapore is crazy. Yeah, I've learned that aircon is like my lifesaver now. If I'm on Airbnb, the first thing I would ever look at is have they got good aircon and look for reviews on it. Because Singapore is very, very tough. Yeah, it's just so humid.
I'll shack up with drug dealers. I don't care. But as long as you've got air conditioning, that's the place for me.
I know. Well, we didn't actually end up living in Singapore because of that exact reason. We thought, yeah, we could. And then we went for a bit of a roaming approach, hence why we're in Vietnam at the moment.
Brilliant stuff. It is amazing that we can do this, though, isn't it? And, we can connect. I'm in the United Kingdom, you're in Vietnam. It sounds like we're in the same room. And to emphasize to the listeners out there, if there's something you fancy doing, there's really technology out there that's free that will help you do it. It's the entry point to anything now is almost non-existent.
Yeah. But I couldn't agree more, and that's why for me it's like if you're unfulfilled and you're going to a workplace, I think there was a big realization of that when you have a job and you are going to work every day. What you're doing is you're trading your time for money, That was quite a big realization for me personally, and I kind of wanted to construct a way of which you can live a life that it didn't mean the more hours you put in, the more results you get out, or the more financial results you get out. And that's kind of back to what you experienced when you had your products on the shelf there and someone bought it from you. You didn't have to then go and put that much time in.
Yeah.
And so, the sort of technology is just aiding that.
And it's not just that, it's the scalable aspect as well. I do training where I could train to 2 people or 1 million people, and it wouldn't be any more effort to me. And that's what I love, the scalable aspect for anything. If you've got value and you structure it that you're closest to the door, then you literally can print money, and it's not going to be easy. It really isn't. I don't want anyone to just think, this is a walk in the park. There's so much you need to learn, but you can literally have a life of your dreams and have a business of your dreams. You don't have to be at a desk at 8 o'clock. You don't have to work till 5 and then leave. None of that. You can create it on your own terms. And for me, I would much rather be earning, £1 more than I need to survive, but have total freedom in my own time, than be earning £1 million a month and being told where I had to be and just restrictions. It would drive me to distraction now.
What's quite ironic as well is that the job versus work for yourself debate often includes what you said there around, having complete control of your time. Now, you may be at that certain place or you may not be, but certainly from what I've experienced and heard loads and loads of people when they start out is actually kind of the complete opposite. You end up putting in so many more hours when you work for yourself, so that the kind of luxury of freedom of time is actually the opposite. But it comes back to what you said of doing what you love and the fact that you're doing it for yourself. And if you're another way to look at it is if you're very, very career driven, whilst we're on this kind of debate, if you're very, very career driven and you go to a workplace every single day and you put your all in because that's kind of in your nature to do your best for your employer, coming back to the Steve Jobs quote of kind of backing yourself and understanding that there's a path ahead for you, there's a big realization for me that if I was then to do that on my own, for my own venture, for myself, you are effectively working every single day on yourself. And the kind of gains that you get back from that, the fulfillment and the growth that you get back from that personally, as well as financially, is absolutely massive, because you're doing effectively a very, very similar thing of every day waking up and putting your all into something. It's just that you've chosen to do it for yourself, as opposed to choosing to do it for an employer. And then if you get it right and you learn and you keep trying, you pivot and you get it right, then of course the financial gains are potentially incredibly more.
Yeah, where I struggled was I went into a venture that was totally new to me, other than the concept of talking for a living. That was the whole benchmark of what I went into. So everything from learning to plug a microphone into recording, to upskilling, to sales funnels, to marketing, to building products, WordPress, everything was new to me. Now that was really hard. That the work wasn't hard, it was the upskilling. Now if I was, say, like a computer programmer, and I could program and I'm earning, 40 grand a year working for someone, I would first of all think about freelancing, and I would go on Upwork and I would see about getting clients who want my talents and do it in the evening. So I then, get some income, but I get confidence that I can actually do that, and then build it up, and then start my own business. I would look for things that I can do naturally and I'm already trained to do and transition. But unfortunately what I did, well, fortunately as well, because it's turned out well, but at the time I went into a totally brand new environment that I had no experience and had to fight my way through. I don't know what I would have transitioned from. Probably teaching people how to present and public speak and stuff. I probably could have done that. But that's what I would do. I would look at what I'm doing now and think to myself, how can I make this that other people will want it? And believe me, it doesn't matter. There's people that I've connected with who will teach people how to clear their email inboxes. Silly things like that. And you think to yourself, really? But people want that. People are drowning under emails and stuff, and they think, oh, yeah, I'd like to know how to do that. So no matter what you do, you can transition and you can sell it. But if you can already do it and you don't have to master that first of all, then I would say you're about 50% ahead of the game.
Yeah. What would your advice be to your younger self?
Well, this is a good question. Shall I play the music and we'll do a hybrid of my show and your show?
Okay.
Right, okay. So this is going to be life.design. Okay, so this is a combined show. So this is the part of the show that we call a sermon on the mic, when we send you back in time to have a one-on-one with your younger self. And if you could go back in time and speak to the young David, what advice would you choose and what age would you choose as well? Well, we're going to find out because we're going to play the theme, and when it fades you up, this is the sermon on the mic.
Here we go with the best bit of the show, the sermon on the mic, the sermon on the mic.
Right, young David. So I'm going to be speaking to the David who is around about 25 years old. You're working for a bank. You're up in London. You're spending your time listening to Blur and Oasis battle it out in the charts and basically getting copious amounts of alcohol down your throat each night. But you know there is something more waiting for you. And I would say to you, David, that you know what's waiting for you because you've been doing it all your life. You've just forgotten. And if you go back and you go to your mum's loft, your attic, and clear it out, and I know you don't want to because who wants to do that, but go there, you'll find a box. And in that box, there is a collection of tapes, all got your little handwriting on when you was 9 or 10 years old, and put them into a cassette player and play them because you will hear the clue to the rest of your life. And what is on those tapes is, do you remember, David, you used to go round with a little tape recorder and a microphone, knocking on banks and butchers and shops and newsagents and saying, "Excuse me, can I interview the manager?" Which is really bizarre, even saying it to you now, but this is what you used to do. You used to make little podcasts because you was interested about how to get a story out and how to interview someone. And go back and listen to that and focus in on those skills that you've got there, because you're already doing it and drinking and enjoying yourself, and Oasis will disappear. Yeah, they won't disappear in your life, but they won't be around much longer. Just know that you've already got the skills. You've just got to start working on it. And if you go earlier than you did, which is 44 years old when you started going, you would be really ahead of the game. You would be probably to the top of where you wanted to be. So it's there for you, but go back and look at the little you, David, because you're already doing what you should be doing in the future.
Brilliant. Cool. Thank you very much, David. And just lastly then, where can people find you?
Well, if you go over to Google, that's a good place, and just type in Join Up Dots, you'll find me. As I say, website, depending on when this is coming out, is a bit hit and miss, is a bit sort of damaged in places. But don't worry, just connect with us on either Facebook, Join Up Dots, or you can go over to iTunes. And of course, if you do go over to iTunes and you listen to my show, then leave a rating and review. That's what all podcasters have to say, and I'll be training Ross to do that every single time as well. But yeah, you can find me anywhere. Join Up Dots, send up the signal, and I'll be there.
Guys, thanks so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. David is clearly one of the most enthusiastic people I think I've ever met, so it's really, really good to have him on the show. Lots and lots to learn from. If you did enjoy it, please head over to iTunes. Please leave us a review. It really, really would mean the world. And also head over to our Instagram at Life Design Diaries, where we're keeping up to date on what's going on at the moment. We're coming up to our final few days here in Hoi An, Vietnam, before we head over to Ho Chi Minh City. So see you soon.